So let's look at grief. So over the last 10 years, we've had our students working on plans for grief, and we collated them. I spent about 4 hours working on it this morning. I even had Dana work on it. And it still needs a lot of work though, but let's go through it. So this is interesting from the beginning, is grief is a normal response to loss, right? In fact, someone said in here that you can actually look at grief as really beautiful thing because it's based on the fact that we love. The fact that we love is why we have grief. So it's really based on something really precious, right? I'm not going to get into the medical details here too much, but there's the different phases that they talk about. The phases that I talk about in my class is two main ones, but these other phases are going to be important as well. Let's see, I've got them outlined below. The two phases I talk about is the person that's not feeling anything, that's not grieving. It's like, oh, I got to go back to work. We got a big deal. I'll be fired. Your mom just died. Or like, oh, let's go do distraction. Let's go have a beer. You know, here, I'll cheer you up. You know, little tequila. Let's do ayahuasca. Oh my God. You know, let's distract. Let's actually ayahuasca actually could be good. But let's actually, you know, not feel. I had a guy that came in last year and he says, you know, I've had so much happen in the last year that if I start crying, I think I'll never stop crying. And by the end of the session, I had him bawling. And it was beautiful. He was finally feeling again. When you shut down any emotional system, you shut down your whole emotional system. But then, then there's the person that's grieving nonstop. I had this woman in the class a few years ago, and I said, she said, yeah, my husband died, and I grieve every day, often cry 3 or 4 times a day, every day. And I said, well, how long ago did he die? And she goes, 2 years ago. And I'm like, holy moly, you are a professional griever. You have it down. You're feeling every day. You are definitely not shut down. It's now time to go to the next level of resolution, which we'll talk about, right? So there's grief from a loved one, death of a loved one, divorce. You could have grief from a loss of your car or the keys, right? Right? Freaking humans. Okay, loss of a job, financial stability, miscarriage, retirement, death of a pet, cherished dream, loved one's serious illness, loss of a friendship, loss of safety after a trauma, selling the family home, or just having the home burned down, right? It's a big one, right? Loss of youth. Oh, that's interesting. Lost my inner child, right? Collective grief of what's going on the planet, right? Or you can have secondary losses. I mean, as a therapist, people often take on grief from their clients, right? I mean, there's regret, there's trauma, general sense of something being pulled from you, ancestral grief. It can also come from anxiety when you judge or shame yourself. But then there's a type of grief that one of the students pointed out that had never occurred to me, that was really a different type. She had something happen to her where I don't know if it was an accident or something, but she could basically not think, and her whole nervous system was frazzled, completely wiped out for like years, and she's still recovering. So it's like when something happens from an accident or a disability and you're living with it every day. It's really quite different when you have a loss and it's gone, it's over. It's not like it's happening. It's not like you're losing something every day. But when you have something like you can't do something, which is getting old, right? When you get old, it's like you lose capacities, and it's easy to have grief, and it's not like it's going away. You're living with it daily. That's an intense type of grief to deal with. I think the most intense, I realize. Okay. Now there can be sudden or sudden or expected. When it's sudden, a sudden loss, it's even more difficult. And there's normal or complicated. Complicated grief they define as it doesn't subside over time. So that's what I was talking about. So there's a name for it, complicated grief, the grief that just keeps going. A lot of people say grief doesn't have a timeline. Well, it's true that, 20 years down the line, you can still have this wave of grief where you just start bawling about someone that you lost, right? But that's different than being in grief over a long time. When you're actually in that blah for a long period of time, it can really hurt you physically, can hurt your job, can hurt your relationships. It can hurt a full range of things when you're in it, as opposed to just the waves. And so when you're just in it, that's when it's time to work on it and change it. We're not meant to feel bad, right? Okay, so they get all types of physical symptoms from complicated grief, cardiovascular, high blood pressure. The brain shows regions affected by emotions around grief in detail. So there's more info here. And this is, by the way, this whole document I've got as a Google Doc, and I'll send you all the link to it so you can look at it and use it. We're going to be posting it on the website, and you can edit it as well and put in things. We'll have editing turned on. In fact, I'm going to turn on editing right now. I'm not editing, sharing, suggesting. Turn on suggesting. So if I put in, if anybody has any ideas as we go, we'll just put them in there. Okay. Okay. Now, there's also a big difference between kids having grief and older people, right? I mean, how you would work with kids, right? Is Roxanne here? Let's see. Let's see. Oh, there she is. Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. So you work with kids with grief, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll talk more about that. Yeah, it's quite different, huh?
Yeah. Mainly the difference is it doesn't look the same in a kid as it does in an adult.
Tell us more. How does it look? Are you there? Can't hear you now.
And my guess, David, is that within the body, we're going to discover a different vibration of grief in a child who at a certain cognitive level is not getting the impact in the same way. So you're not going to see the vibrational, let's say, resonance of it in the same dimension.
Uh-huh.
But we are going to be able to track it, and you'll see a progression. But I do expect that you'll see at different age groups with their understanding of what death is, they're going to have a very light impact or a darkening and deepening effect.
That's really good. So your understanding of death affects the way you deal with grief in a really big way. Since we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, David, Shannon, I noticed that also in hospice, with the difference between somebody who has committed to sort of a palliative hospice approach to dying and somebody who hasn't. They're still fighting. There's the difference in the grief and the experience of it.
So you're saying whether they've accepted that they're moving on? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just pointing out a qualitative difference when suddenly even the doctors and the family and the people themselves, when they have moved into or they've decided to be in the realm of hospice, which is not a location, right? It's an approach, hospice or palliative, as opposed to the,
Okay, so it is what I said. It is what I said. That it's like, because generally when you move into hospice, it's like you've kind of given up, or not given up. You're accepting that this is the next stage to move on. So that is the difference, which is quite different than, oh no, we're going to beat this,
Yeah, but it's not even a giving up. There's something more closer to the quality of love as opposed to loss, grief when in hospice. So it's interesting.
Cool. Okay, excellent, very cool. Yeah, it's really interesting because, as you know, we'll talk about the higher perspective around death and grief is really important in this process. Okay. The yeah, grief and process when loss when a disability happens. That's what I was talking about. Okay. Most grief is treated by support, family, friends, listening, hugs, expressions of love. Yeah, it's really, the interventions can be drugs, psychotherapy, right? Exercise, essential oils. There's all these different aspects, hypnosis, right? There's some good books on it. Stages of grief. I mean, there's the general stages, and this can be important besides the ones I talked about, is denial and disbelief, right? That's kind of like shut down, right? An aspect of being shut down, like not even facing it, right? And then anger and rage. That's interesting. Yeah, there's anger and rage. Often that's not a part of grief, it can be. I could see that it totally could be, but when my kitty died, there was zero anger. That doesn't even compute, right? But if you lose your house, or especially, it's burnt down because of, somebody didn't do the right thing. I could see there could be totally anger. So these are important because now you're dealing with different aspects when you're actually doing the treatment. Disorientation, yeah, it's kind of similar to being shut down, but it's really just not knowing what to feel, right? And then acceptance is the final. I've always had a little trouble with the word acceptance because it can mean two things. One is you finally accept it and you're fine with it's okay, and that's beautiful. But the other is to accept that it sucks and go on. And I don't think that's a good aspect. So I often don't use the word acceptance because some people think of it like, well, I accept that it sucks that they died. I'm just going to move on. I accept it. Well, now you're ending with sucks still, right? Yeah, I lost too early. Yeah. There you go. When a loved one is murdered, anger. Yeah, cool. Or, actually another one is suicide. I can't believe they did that. God, right? They knew it would hurt me. That one's doesn't last too long because they must have been suffering. Okay, yeah, or don't want to let go of the loss, right? Like, not going to let go.
David, those things in green there, I believe the student was designing intake questions that were specific for each stage.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. So these are actually intake questions based on these stages. Okay, and this is good. This is really important. When you're doing the intake questions, it's critical that you assess where the person is at, because based on what stage they're at, there's going to be different types of treatments, especially different between whether they're shut down or just grieving all the time, right? I mean, that's a huge difference as to the way you're going to approach it. So this is really, really helpful. Okay, yeah, let's look at something. So if they're, how can I help you? What do you need right now? Yeah, there's a lot of questions we have around this and a lot of treatments. Are you active? Okay. Anger, do you allow yourself to be angry? Are you allowed to be angry? May I help you release your anger? Sweet. Do you allow yourself to grieve, to be sad and cry? Okay. How would you like to honor your loss? How would you like to create a ritual? Okay, cool. Okay, so here are the conceptual frameworks that we've come up with so far for you to add. Okay, there's three main areas that I've put in here based on the types of treatments. Okay? And it could be expanded into these, because I didn't really take into consideration the full on stages. I don't have anger in here at all, actually. But the first one is when someone's shut down. Okay. Well, for any aspect, to do peace sounds is always great. And that's what we do with sound healing. Crystal bowls, Tibetan bowls, right? Tuning forks on the body, voice, toning, chant, mantra, anything that gets people in the zone, right? Gets people to a place of peace and stillness. And there's 1,000 things you can do with sound healing to do that. And people do it in so many different ways. And any way you can get people peaceful and calm is beautiful, because that overcomes, that's like, it's a good place to start working from something, but it also overcomes any feelings or any chaos in your system that is hurting you, right? It's always beautiful, right? And that would be good for when a person has just lost someone, right? Or also when a person is grieving over time. Now, I know people that are psychotherapists that actually do this peace aspect at different times. I know people like that will start with a sound bath or sound treatment to get them in the zone before they start talking about it, right? And then I know people that actually talk about it and bring it up and get everything up present, and then they do the sound bath as a way of releasing. So those are two completely different possibilities that are really cool. You could even do a little invocation and get people into bliss and peace in the beginning, and then later do a bigger one, which is a releasing one. So you could do both, right? So that's, I think, really good to know, to do peace before or later. Okay. Now, if someone is shut down, the basic concept that I do is to bring them into the sadness. And this is more common. We're not doing anything to change the grief at all. In fact, we're actually trying to get them into grief, to feel the sadness. And that guy that I said was just bawling, that's what I did. I actually felt, he told me everything that was going on. And I was just like, I went into grief for him. And I was like, whoa. And I started making sounds. I was like, oh, I was just like crying for him. And he finally was entrained into it and was totally bawling finally. Was finally feeling again. Right? Any comments, Rox or Lauren? No, you guys just unmuted from before. Unmuted again. Any comments on that? Bringing them into sadness. I mean, just going, whee.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you
Can you hear me?
remember whalers that are hired in the Celtic tradition and
Yeah.
many of the ancient European traditions actually would have people come in to help people who were unable to feel the grief to actually pick up the crying and the wailing, and
Cool.
you know,
Yeah, we've got
it's a
that.
lot like what you're talking about.
Yeah, we have that under this heading later. These are
Okay.
just the overview of conceptual frameworks, and then we're going to look
Okay.
at how to do it. That's very cool, though. Yeah, whalers. I mean, and I know in Ireland, they've actually got whaling groups that go around when people die.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very sweet. Okay, so then there's the other aspect is expressing feelings with sound, right? And that's like, you know, it's tricky because a lot of people are really not open. They're scared to make sound, right? And told to be quiet, right? So the first thing, so it's really just playing with sound. We'll go through those in a minute to get them to actually make sound so they can then express their emotions with sound. Because sometimes it's hard to express it with words, but with sound, you can just go, ah, right? And if you can open up that channel, that's huge, where they can just start making the sound of how they're feeling, okay? The second area is when a person has just lost someone. Now, this is quite different. I believe if someone's just had a loss, you don't work towards transforming it and getting over it. You work towards just allowing it to be. If it's just happened, okay, wait a second. Let me back up. Okay, Shannon's got some. It reminds me, ode to joy and demon, saddest key, dark, then it elevates. Oh, that's cool. That's good. Let me grab that. So that's the transformation later, right? Because we're actually not this is transformation is them coming up. Okay. Okay. Oh, let's see. Okay. Ode to joy and do it didn't copy. So let me try again. Ode to joy. Ode to joy. I'll just type it. Okay, this is actually just a note. Ode to joy. Okay. Then okay, the professional mourners, yeah. Okay, yeah, mourners, so we'll get to that. Okay, so we're just looking at the overall structure now. So yeah, I think it's like, you know, you can get them into peace and when when they just lost someone, this is if they're not shut down, right? They're ready to feel it and just go into it and just, you know, feel it. There could be a bit of transformation, right? But you know, you have to be careful. I mean, if someone just lost someone, I think it's not like you're trying to get out of it. It's really, I mean, I think at least a couple of weeks for me is what it takes for grief, right? So to just sit with it, allow them to express it and go with baby steps, right? Okay, let's see. Hold on here. Imagine, okay, yeah, hold on these ideas for actual, we're going over the conceptual framework. So hold on to those ideas and when we get into the details of it. What we're really looking at is whether this conceptual framework is good. Okay, okay, okay. Because I want to copy these and then I want to lose them. I'm going to copy them in. So slow down, slow down. Okay, when a person is grieving over a long period of time, then we do the piece, and then we can bring them into a higher perspective. Actually, I have this switched below. Okay, and then letting go, and letting, you know, do aspects of letting go, right? Okay. Any thoughts on this overall framework? I mean, I could add in a section for disorientation, a section for anger and rage, right? I'm gonna put a note here. Add in section for rage and disorientation. Any other thoughts as to ways to approach grief based on this? Okay. Yeah, all those techniques you guys are coming up with, Shannon, if you can wait on those until we're into that section, it'd be really cool. Because I don't want to miss them. They're really great. I'm gonna copy them in there. Get them in there.
David, I'd like to just say something briefly. I don't know if this is now is the appropriate time to bring this up, but along with this framework, I was thinking in terms of, when someone has a trauma or has something shocking happen to them, we look at it from like how they'll emotionally react to it is based on their constitution. And so some people just like naturally grieve everything. Some people need to find joy in everything. Some people need to just nourish everything. And each element
Slow down. Let's get those, because those are really important. I think this is an important section that needs to be in, and we put it in the other section, types of people. So what are the main types of people? Because I think this is huge. I mean, the way different people, you would approach people with sound as well. So tell me, say now.
So let's look at 5 constitutions.
Well, just give me a general overview or an outline of it.
So we'll start with the earth element. So
okay, now, what did you just say as far as the different constitutions?
Let's go with the elements of earth, metal.
Okay, what are those? Tell me what those mean. What does earth mean? What would a constitution with earth mean?
An earth person would be somebody that when they are, let's say, under the heading of like their natural constitution would mean no matter what the situation, if they were knocked out of balance from a trauma, they would want to nourish, over-nourish, worry, nourish.
Oh, worry. Okay, worry types. Okay, what else? What's the other types?
Next would be metal, and that would be for the organ systems of lung and large intestine, and they grieve. They grieve everything.
Okay, they grieve easily. Okay, and what's the next type?
The next one would be water, and that would be more water element, kidney and bladder, and they are sad. They fear. They're scared.
Oh, fear-based. Okay, and then next.
And the next would be wood, which would be the liver and gallbladder, and they get mad. They're mad.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. That's cool. So I think there would be different approaches for
the last one is fire. They just have to love everything, and they can laugh, and they can inappropriately laugh.
Cool.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
So David, these are from traditional Chinese medicine. In Ayurveda, the constitutions are Vata, Pitta, Kapha, which is, it is based on elements, but it's kind of, the Vata would be more the worry type, the Pitta would be the angry type, and the Kapha would be the wallowing in the sadness type. And of course, there's also like Unani Tib and other constitutional systems that we could use, but it is definitely helpful to be able to look at the different constitutions, just be clear on what system we're using, or just kind of try to find a general system that we're kind of being inspired by these other systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, cool. I think it's important. What I should do is back out here for a second and give you the overview so we can do things one at a time, because I'm getting ideas that are actually further. And for people that haven't done this meetings before, what we're looking at is we look at the overall current treatments and what's going on. Then we have the conceptual framework as to what we're doing. And then we're going to go through safety guidelines and even preparation for the session. And then we have intake questions, and we have a ton of intake questions for this, right? And then we get finally into the treatments. So that's the structure of what we're doing. And then we're going to do homework for afterwards. Okay. So what Kirsi is talking about is actually one of the actual intake questions. Okay. Okay. And then someone else said, okay. Okay. Let's see if we can come back to Shannon's comments. I want to forget. I'm not sure what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. Feel free to, instead of doing the chat, instead of to actually just unmute and start talking. Go ahead. I'm just muting everybody right now.
Can I say something?
Sure.
As in like types of people? Is that what we're on, types of people?
Yeah.
Like there might be some people who are more externally focused, so they're more vocal, more expressive, more kind of just willing to express everything to other in the context of being with others. And then there are more internally focused that tend to be a little bit more private and everything more happens within them, and that's totally fine, but they may not be as like outwardly expressive or willing to share everything going on inside in that kind of context.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, this reminds me of if we're going to be looking at things that might be more palatable to mainstream Western medicine, the Myers-Briggs personality test is used a lot, and that kind of speaks to what Dana was just talking about in terms of internal versus external thinking versus perceptive. So Myers-Briggs also might be interesting to look at.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is Shannon. I'm just going to say that we're speaking about, essentially, we're putting all these labels that are used in various cultures, various things, but it all boils down to some essential measurement of some essential qualities, right, of consciousness, of perception of reality. And so the more we just pick whatever version of that is acceptable to hospitals, so that's, you know, Myers-Briggs or whatever.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, hospitals or for sound therapists, we're doing two different focuses. Go ahead. Yeah, that's great. Great. Okay. Okay. So anything else on the conceptual frameworks here? Okay.
Yeah, just if you're following what I think Leslie was just saying for the types of people, she was going over the 5 elements. You missed one, which was the fire, which was everybody loves everything. And that's another constitution.
No, okay. Cool. Okay. Okay. So safety guidelines. If the person's especially having a difficult time continuing, considering suicide, right? I think that's really important to note. You might need to get help. Any other thoughts about safety guidelines? It's kind of the big one right there, huh? There's one that I should always put, that if a person is fragile, be careful, be really careful with sound, with activating sound. Even a crystal bowl can be too much. Wrong to be way too much. That's kind of always standard for whatever you do with sound. Okay, you have no other comments on safety guidelines?
Noting body language.
I'm sorry?
Noting body language if a person is closing to the experience, or perhaps in a sound experience, if they've turned over to shield from the sounds, maybe going into more of a harmonizing instead of providing dissonance in that activation.
David, I put in the
Just
chat.
1 second, just 1 second.
Sorry.
I was supposed to reactions and body language. Or what it's working. What? Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I put in the chat brain dominance, and I realized I should explain. So it's my understanding that just as there's So a homeopathic versus allopathic, that's like give more of same, give less. But people's brain dominance, which actually there's a tendency, but then there's a changing depending on the context. We also need to understand that. And I suppose in hospitals, etc., or even looking at a voice print, you can get a sense of that moment, what's happening if the person is right or left brain dominant, which is they can actually require the reverse, the inverse of what you think. Right? So that's something to keep in mind.
Cool. Great. Okay. Preparation, just creating a nice atmosphere, soft music, co-create a field of infinite love, and allow the client permission to be where they're at. Set sacred space. Okay. Intake questions. There's a full range here. I mean, so many that's going to take too long to go through them. But, there's basic questions about them, any medication, biggest struggles. I mean, how are you doing right now? You can start with the really basic questions of how's your day, right? Just because the intake questions are really big on actually connecting to the person and creating trust, right? It's really important. So we have, these questions can be really telling. Does your grief cause you pain? How's it affecting your life? What do you fear the most? There's so many questions here that are really helpful. I'm sure there's some in the psychotherapy field that we could add to this that would be really good. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your grief level? You have trouble sleeping? Really the big question is, how is it affecting your life? I mean, you're really gauging, how are they dealing with it? I mean, some people might come in and say, yeah, I actually have gone to a higher power, but then I just crying. And other people are like, I don't know what to do. I'm just a mess, right? And my job, I can't go to work, I can't eat, I can't sleep, so there's a full range of how people are dealing with it that is really, really helpful to know. Okay. If you guys can look over those later and add more questions if you haven't. Feelings that may have been affecting, but they did not even know. So even by asking it can help. Yeah, very cool. Okay, the treatments. Okay, when a person is shut down, first, there we've got the peace sounds where you can do like full range, and that you can use like, crystal bowls, ocean drums, cresting waves, pan flutes, singing into their heart space, Tibetan bowls, koshi chimes. This is Zafir. Foot massage. I don't think that goes under sound. Okay. And hold the feet, talk the client through a gentle grounding exercise, crystal bowls, alchemy bowls. After, do affirmations, your complete whole being, while actually doing the sound can be good. How are they feeling? How the session felt? Okay, it's soothing music. You could just play music, especially music on a sound table or sound lounge. It'd be really beautiful just to get them into that zone, to a place of peace. Nature sounds can be really good. Home note. You can do an assessment to find out where their rhythm is. I play each of the 12 notes to see which one makes them the most peaceful, and then play a CD for them in that note. Or you can just play instruments in that note where they're at peace. Invite them to communicate with spirit guide or higher self to receive positive messages. You can go completely out there, right? You can commune with guides, animals, higher beings, mother's love. Affirmations or tapping, with tapping specific to the stage they're at. Right? Affirmations. Chakra work on the sound table, voice, piano, tuning forks. Starting with low notes, going up through the high notes. It's just some of the range of sound healing. We could actually have a standard section that could be way more organized for any issue. It could be standard, just all the different issues, all the different ways you can do sound healing on someone in general, right? Because there's a million ways you could do it. I mean, here's with the tuning forks, you could do lung 1 and lung 2, which are the grief points for acupuncture, right? Or you could use the heart, work on the heart chakra as well. And then the aspect of bringing them into the sadness. That's what I mentioned before, where I just actually feel the sadness and bring them into it. Bring their thoughts to silence. Good. Okay. Then the expressing the feelings with sound. So again, or not again, that a lot of people are really hesitant to make sound. The number one thing I've found that's good to get people going is to ask them to do call and response, right? Or just join in when you make a sound. If you say, make the sound of how you're feeling, most people go, what are you talking about? Or they look at you like you got two heads, right? So, but if you get them to do call and response for a bit, it's like the kids, I got them to do call and response for a couple of weeks, and then they were totally ready to make the sound of how they're feeling. So you get them comfortable with making sound themselves first. So there's a little process. And then ask them to make the sound of their feeling. You can even figure out what bowls to play based on the sound they make, right? You can use voice and movement. So you can actually, move to the sound. This shouldn't be in this section. There's a lot of things in the wrong sections here. Okay, opening the flow of chakras can actually help them. That's kind of like more an actual, I'm going to put that in the other section of peace. Okay. Playing music goes to different emotions and see if any one of them can pull them to feel something. That could be cool. Something to break up stuck energy, right? I mean, if they're like a first responder type, you might need to get intense to really get them to feel. Feel where they're at and make the sound of that grief for them. That's exactly my favorite right there, is feel where they're at and make the sound of grief for them. Okay, let's see what Shannon's saying here. Screaming pillow, although that can be cool. Drumming with wailing, or actually, another one that you could do is you could actually wail for them, right? I mean, say, hey, let's do a wolf howl. Woo, woo, woo. I've actually had that work before. Okay, and then have them join in. Okay, and have them. Okay, so she's saying.
I can just cut to the chase for you. So what I find, because a lot of people are very nervous about sound in general, even your own. So I find for some reason, there's something about the vowel sound of A, ah with the W, ah with an H, ah with a, which we've used in so many ways since babies, but they can actually even just imagine, because they can draw upon the memory, imagine it or see it as the word dissolving into the heart, and it literally, their mirror neurons take on from there. And so you don't have to make even a peep. You don't and they don't, and it still helps.
Cool, great, excellent. Those are so simple. And just so assigning meanings to vowels is what you're saying.
No, well, no, not, you don't even know, that gets complicated, but.
Well, you do, that's what you're saying, okay.
Is that they can,
is a wondrous starry night, or when they've seen a kitten. Okay. So you're just trying to open up the heart with it. Yeah. So you can do
relying upon. So if you do research of all the different cultures, yes, we can say, somebody will say, no, the heart, the root chakra is not, it's you, or it's red, or it's whatever. But there's something about the A sound and the heart, and you look back on your experience since you were a child, the different ahs, it's a happy, it's a sad, it's a whatever.
In our class on chakras, we actually go through 10 different sounds that have been used for the heart chakra. So it's not just there are full range. You could use you can use ooh. There's a full range that have been used since the beginning of time. So this is great. So you're just talking about.
Sorry, David. So my point was actually, there are zillions of those and lots of rishis or lots of whoever has done. But I found with the hospice people that just the A sound, if you think back to the doctor saying ah or the ah, that's the one that we as Western people, we've experienced it. So just by the spelling of it or the typing. So we don't have to go into all the research or the details of whether the Indians and the Chinese or the this or the that. It's just
I think,
that
yeah,
one is excellent.
I would like to not limit it to one sound. I always like to give people choices. And so any vowels that people use for love is good. So we're associating this with love to open up the heart, it sounds like. But you could associate the different vowels with, not just love, but we could associate it with the feeling of grief, the energy of grief, So you could do different vowels associated with love or grief or other emotions, right? So to give the widest perspective here. Okay, yeah. So any sound that makes it easy for them to start expressing themselves. And that's very cool. Okay, any other things for people to express themselves? Because that's tricky sometimes to get people to do it. Okay. Okay. When a person has just lost someone, well, here you're just going to, tap into the energy of grief. Yeah. I think when you give people a choice, some people I will like different sounds, and you give them a choice, especially the practitioner, then you can access more people. Awe is great. Awe is great, but there's a lot I really like much better. It's really good. So there's a full perspective. And it's whatever people like. And that way you can say, oh, well, let's try this if that doesn't work for you. Right? Or say, you could use this, but play with different sounds and see what works for you. Yeah, that's okay. When someone's just lost someone, I mean, really, you're just like sitting with them where they're at. Do some sound to get them blissed out and just run love, right? Just run love. I mean, there's really not much else to do when someone's just lost someone, right? I got your point, Shannon. Okay, got it. Okay, so any other thoughts about when someone's actually grieving in the middle of it? Okay. Okay. Now here's the thing for when people have complicated grief.
Can I just add something?
I'm sorry, sure.
I was thinking about if you are in the grieving, I think it's a beautiful way for people to, if they are capable of it, to look back at their life, what they, all the things that have not been solved. You understand what I mean?
Yeah. I think you're right. It's important. I think, instead of just being where they're at, I think going to the higher perspective, and we've got a whole section on that, and that includes what you just said. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, in our preparation, we talked about giving them permission to grieve in the preparation part. But yeah, permission, let me add that in here too. I'll create a song for them, for their loved one. That's sweet. Create a song if they're musically inclined. If musically inclined, create a song. Right? Create a song. And you could do it for them if you're musically inclined, or you could get them to do it. And get them to help you write the lyrics. Oh my God. Cool. Okay. So here's complicated grief. Now let me tell you my story of two main ways to deal. I mean, first you can get them blissed out, right? Get them in peace, right? It's always good. But then there's the transformation or letting go section, right? Now, actually, later we're getting to the higher perspective, so I'll save my thing. Okay, now let me play for you a little video of the Haka ceremony for grief. This is a little intense. Okay. Let me try to check this out. This is, I'm sorry, I should give you a little context. This is a funeral. This is a funeral ceremony they're at right now. Wow.
This is the canoe that a young
Okay.
With as people.
Oh,
are
I'm sorry.
preparing
I'm
for-
sorry. Well, start over. I couldn't hear you. You're really low
sorry.
in volume, Mary.
Oh, okay, so Mary, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, you're really low. Get close to the mic if you can.
Okay, so I just think that's awesome. And I've seen that for rugby as warriors are getting ready for a battle, that's what they go into, and that's the type of dance that they do for their culture. And it is just really spirit conjuring, that they, you know, are ready for the battle, ready to take on the evil, ready to prepare a path for their loved one. But I think, yeah, that's an awesome display of the types of sound that can happen for different events in your life, and for grief, like to address it that way, as opposed to just being like sad and wimpy, but like to take that on, to take on the armor of your strength, and yeah, an empowerment. I like that.
Empowerment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, it's interesting. I mean, to really be empowered. I mean, and it's full. It's like it ties into the whole aspect of wailing, which would be under the letting go section here. I mean, really just wailing, and really full on getting into it, and really just with full power. This could be, I mean, drumming, playing a drum really intensely, right? I mean, just anything that really moves it, so you're not like overcome by it. You're not completely, you know, it's not over you. It's like you are still in your power.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was a great demonstration.
Now.
Okay.
Okay.
Changed my system.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, no, that should be under the conceptual framework, huh? I'm gonna put that up there later.
Right, and cultural approaches. You know,
Oh my God.
we used to see in the Midwest or the Middle East, when women were grieving, all that sounds that they would make that were just part of their culture. And we'd see it on the news and think it was odd, but that was kind of their way to deal with that and was a great way to express that. And during childbirth, other traditions too, like have
Oh my God.
different sounds that they naturally express.
This would be such a great book. I mean, there's so many. I was in Bali. I saw like they were doing a ceremony, a funeral ceremony in the streets, right? And they said, yeah, they actually kind of cry for a little bit, and then it's just a party, right? And then I know in Africa, there's tribes where they'll grieve for a month, right? And some cultures even grieve for a year. It would be so cool. I wonder if there's a book out there about all the different traditions in different cultures as to how they deal with grief. This would be really informative because you would get all these little gems from the different traditions. I love that.
I have some, when I worked in the hospital in San Francisco, we had a lot of Chinese patients. And when one of them would die, the entire family would come in and we'd give them the entire private room for as long as they needed. And they would cry and wail and scream. You would hear all kinds of noise in that room, and it could go on for hours. And then they were done, you know, then we were allowed to come in and do what we had to.
Wow, that's so great. Oh my God. Isn't that cool that actually have it built into your culture? It's like, oh, got to go back to work. Cool, excellent. Okay, so yeah, there's so much vocalization you can do to let it go. I mean, we've got a full range of different things we do in our releasing stuck emotions, where you make the sound of it, and transform it slowly. You make the sound of that part of the body that's holding it, right? Or you can just even have higher beings and source come through your voice and make the sound of it. Just anything, you know, so many different ways to actually do a ceremony, a whole procedure, so it feels like it's been transformed, right? So you could do like a full-on ceremony, guided meditation to receive messages and to actually transform it, right? But really just, this is for the stage where they're ready to now let it go. They've been grieving. It's been 2 years and I'm still grieving, right? Okay. Make a gratitude list. Oh, that should be elsewhere. I'm gonna put that elsewhere. Okay. Okay, so there's any other ceremonies or ideas? I mean, one of the best is, imagine you're over this and it's completely done with this, and make the sound of how it would feel when it's completely resolved. I really like that one. That one's good for any issue. To actually imagine it's already done. It's completely gone. It's completely resolved, and you're back to you. Make the sound of that to get that energy in your body. That's really a big one. Okay. Let's see if there's any other in here. From grief journey, total sound journey from grief to bliss. Slowly, right? Oh, I like this one. This one's so easy and it's so simple. You know, if you can bring in universal love, that does it right there, right? But most people don't have a clue how to access universal love. So a simple way to do it is just send love to your own heart. I've used this one so many times, right? Okay, just send a sound. It's like, I remember the first time this woman had, her boyfriend had just left her. And I said, okay, just send love to your own heart. And when we're done, I said, look, you've got all the love in the world. And it will never go away. Right? That's a really good one. Okay. Dahlia? No. You just happened to be under it. I just came in. Okay. Okay. Now here's my favorite part. the higher perspective. Let me tell you my okay story. So years ago, when I was in college, I was in this class, and this on the first class, the instructor said, okay, partner with somebody and tell them something really deep about yourself. And I got hooked up with this woman, and she said, yesterday I was at the beach just north of Santa Cruz with my friend. We were swimming out in the ocean, and the waves carried her down and into the rocks, and she was killed. And I'm like, holy shit, what are you doing here? And she said, it was really weird. Immediately, I felt it was okay. And she said, the paramedics came, there was a big crowd trying to resuscitate her, and she was gone. And she said she went walking up to the road overlooking the beach, and there was a guy up there who had been playing guitar. And he says, what's going on down there? And she said, my friend just died. And he played a song on the guitar that completely made it okay. So then I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you about myself after that, oh my God, right? So I went home that night, and I'm telling
did you ask what the song was?
No, it was
that made it
improvisation.
okay?
It was improvisation.
Oh, okay.
Improvisation.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I went home that night, and I was telling my roommates this story, and my roommate Andrew is like a light being, right? Light worker. And Andrew goes, yeah, I've never played a song like that in my life. It was Andrew, my roommate, who played this song for this woman the day before, whose friend had just died. I just met. I'm like, oh my God. That was like over 30 years ago. Last year, Andrew was in Kauai riding a bicycle and got hit by a car and was killed. And my first thought was, it's okay. That's a really good one. It's the wheel of life, right? It's okay. Although I can tell you, I mean, when my kitty died, my previous kitty, I can go to okay, but I mean, I'm not like, I mean, it's okay she died, but still, I was a week, I was sad. In fact, I called my class and I said, I want to cancel class for the next class. And they said, oh, let's cancel the whole week. And I just grieved, right? And cried and thought about all the cool things about my kitty, and it was beautiful because I went to the store and I looked around, I think everybody's running around with their head cut off. And I felt so grounded, so in my body, because I was not resisting it, right? So that it's okay is, I think, really important. It's like the whole concept that it's all perfect. Death is light. There's nothing to grieve. I was talking to my friend Bev, who she's the one that came up with the idea of putting gemstones into crystal bowls. She's got a crystal bowl store in Mount Shasta. She's just a light being. And her husband died a few years ago, or a couple of years ago. And I said, well, because we were talking about this class, and I said, Bev, well, how do you deal with it? And she said, I have no grief because I can still contact them anytime. I mean, when you learn that they're not gone, that they're just in a higher realm, their spirit's still there, and I can still talk to them and connect with them. So I don't have any grief at all. I'm like, cool, right? I mean, also it can be a celebration, right? Celebration. It's like, here's my favorite. It's like, thank you for that bright light on the timeline of my life. Seems like the ultimate resolution of grief is gratitude. Thank you for that time I had with you. Thank you. That energy, and you can resonate it with sound, is so good for you. It doesn't break down your system. Grief is great for a short time, but over a long period, it kind of takes your energy. So many cool things, right? You accepted whatever phase of grief you're in, that moment. A warm, soft blanket, you know. I chose this path and accept it before coming here. You're guided, protected, and one day the sun will shine again. I wrote a song that say that a song that's the lyrics are, it's okay to get down to the ground. Tomorrow we'll be laughing. Feel it completely. Right? So to actually just move to the higher perspective of it's okay and gratitude is really beautiful. There's you know, from a higher perspective, we are pure spirits that never die and the love never goes away. Any ideas or thoughts on this section? And you can always do any of this with sound. You could do it as a guided meditation, just, you know, state the affirmations or say it before you do the sound, you know, say, okay, we're going to do a celebration now of that person's life. And all these sounds are a celebration. Thank you for your presence here that when it was here. Yeah, doing a whole ceremony to actually honor that person is, I think, probably one of the most beautiful things you can do when they're ready, right? A ceremony, because this is what cultures do. They honor that person's life. They don't just move on. They take the time to honor that person's life. Anybody have an experience of grief that they had where and how they worked with it that they would like to share? Gotta be brave. Lux?
Well, as you know, I've worked with chronic and terminally ill children all my career. And it came time when my mother and father passed away individually. But my mother's request was that she wanted me or someone in the family to take the ashes of my father and mingle them with her ashes and go to a place where they fell in love, because they had a beautiful marriage and they were together all the time. And the task was mingle our ashes together and go down to the Hudson River and toss them in the Hudson River, because that's where Daddy and I fell in love and we want to be there together forever. Well, I mean, first of all, it's illegal to throw ashes. Secondly, you have to figure out how to hire a beautiful yacht or someone who's willing, a captain who's willing to let you hang off the back of the boat and dump the ashes as you say prayers and throw roses and whatever. Well, I managed to get some friends and help finding the right captain and actually making this incredible ritual, which my mother and father always made up things as we grew up. They were so creative, and it so suited them in the end to have an extraordinary burial, so to speak, at sea. And so I had the whole thing filmed and I put it to Frank Sinatra music, and we had a copy for everybody in the family. So that's my grief story on ritual and ceremony.
Cool. You know, we thought of this incredible idea last night. I did a sound bath for my neighbors here last night, and someone said, has anybody thought of taking the ashes of a person and embedding them in a crystal bowl? At first I was like, oh my God, that's weird. And then I thought, oh my God, that's cool.
That's so cool.
So I said, okay, here's grandmother, the grandmother bowl.
Perfect. I love it.
And
That's
actually
great.
someone asked the head of a Crystal Tones and he said, oh yeah, people have asked that. Right? Because you could do it. You could do it. You could put the ashes in a bowl, and now you got them, and you can play your grandma.
Instead of you get police way.
Oh, Brett,
Oh,
okay, cool. Evelyn's father just died last month or a couple of months ago, and you want to share your story, Evelyn, of what you did briefly? Just so that she did a whole social media thing. Are you up for sharing that, Evelyn?
Yeah, what I did at first was sharing how grateful I was because I did not have any contact with him anymore. So what I noticed was that we lose memories, and by doing a gratitude list, memories came back, and I put it on Facebook, and so many people responded to it, because it's so easy to go into the negative part, because in a way we are educated to show the negative side of if somebody passes away. And I did not choose that. So I choose the positive side. And really a lot of people responded to that positive side. And after that, I made a ritual and a kind of altar. And I put it also on Facebook. And so I used statues. They were associated with symbols, the qualities of the person. So that was also a really beautiful way to honor my father at that point. I think that was the whole background of doing the gratitude list and the ritual altar, to honor him in a human way, because we forget that people are human. We talk about human, but we don't see the people as human. So I made that altar, and I also chose a song. He had a favorite singer, and he had a favorite song, and I wrote. I said aloud the lyrics, and looking back, because I was listening to it yesterday again, and I'm so glad that I did that, because I could feel my connection with him in that way, and bringing him back to a beautiful place. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah.
So Roxanne, tell us what you do with children. I mean, you have children that are dying, so it's even more the parents out of that. But what would you do for a child who has lost a parent?
That's a good question. The first time I really had a very intimate opportunity to create ritual with a mother whose son was 5.5 years old. Many of the children that I worked with were in Children's Hospital for a bone marrow transplant. And the transplants in those days were not as successful. So 60% of the kids died. And her little son, her little guy, David, his name is David, went through 3 transplants, and unfortunately, none of them took. And so she asked me, would you come with me to the funeral home because I live in far away. Many of the women and children who came to Children's Hospital were from distant countries. And she said, I cannot go home and bury him, but could you come with me so we could cremate him? And I would like to go to Walden Pond and to put his ashes around the pond. And so one day it happened that we were able to go. And what I did to help her to retain the memory and to have something to hold because she let go of him was to create a pressed flower arrangement in a frame and to give it to her, as those were the weeds and the wildflowers that were growing around the bank of the Walden Pond for her to hold. I found that having something tangible for people is a very powerful symbolic gesture. So that was really the first time that I have participated in such a full-on way. But all of the work that we're talking about today, particularly creating ceremony and honoring the life and not focusing on the death, was really pretty much my philosophy. So I love that you're incorporating this, weaving it into the awareness that we have to have when we're working with grieving people who, as much of life it's our attitude and taking that higher perspective that makes all the difference. David, that was a beautiful story that you told. And
cool. Great, thank you.
Pretty much resonates with how I behave in my own work.
Sweet. Anybody else have any thoughts on how to work with children that lose a parent or lose a sibling? As to how it might be different.
Oh.
Because.
Yeah.
Anybody have any thoughts, or you have any thoughts, Rox?
Yeah, it definitely is different. But again, if you have established rapport with this young person, and I'm talking children who are, preschool or early childhood, are harder to create ritual for in some ways because they really don't comprehend the permanency of death. Mm-hmm. And so you have to offer them a way to respond to their questions and their confusion. And this one little kiddo said to me, well, I know my grandmother is now in heaven, but her wheelchair is still over there. How is she going to get around in heaven without her wheelchair? Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? It's like they don't grasp that you don't need your wheelchair anymore. Yeah. It's how their little minds work. And so you have to work with their level of understanding and comprehension, and then speak to their queries and their concerns and reply in a way that makes sense of what's occurred.
Another one that occurs to me is basic component of kids is bonding. Anything that you can do to create stability and safety around it, because it could be scary, if they go, oh my God, they're gone, or mom's gone. I mean, so in the Montessori school for the kids, we do, stable, consistent sound of love, basically trying to do the energy of mom's love as much as possible.
David?
Uh-huh.
As I was listening, I was just thinking also, I used to volunteer for HART, Healing Arts Reaching Kids, at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. And we did both sound and art separately. And the kids, we do it with the family. So it wasn't just for the child or for the sister and for the brother and for the mother and father. And it was very much a bonding experience. And it was very individual, and it doesn't have to be separate from sound. And so I just wanted to throw that in, that art sometimes really captures a feeling that they can have express their feelings without words.
Cool, great, excellent. Oh, that's right. Get them to express their feelings without words. Okay, cool. Okay, so then there's, I mean, what I would really like to do is have the funding to work with someone here to set up the website. We could even do it on the Medical Sound Association site, where we have wailing Zoom sessions. We got gratitude Zoom session. We have like a whole section on not only just all these different techniques, but sound techniques for doing grief. So if anybody wants to help with that, it's like a very serious project that could take a lot of work, but it could be, I mean, especially with what's going on the planet, this is so huge, right? There's so much grief that's unexpressed right now, or unfelt, or people don't know what to do with. It's just a mess. It would be so relevant right now. So email me and we'll because I'm really serious about it right now.
Can I add in one more later component of grief that often gets hidden is the family constellation of grief, where perhaps it's this generational, and then this person has no idea where the grief is coming from. And I've done stuff with the bowls where we've actually set up the whole family with the bowls and really made big shifts. So there's hidden ways of where grief is passed on through generations.
Cool. Yeah, we mentioned that in the beginning. That's important. Cool. Excellent. I know people that are really good at that, like working with ancestral grief. That's really important. Okay. Any other? Okay. Yeah, send us that, Amy. Sounds for grief meditation. It's cool. Oh, I've got some songs. I've got one called Good Grief. It's really beautiful. I've got a few songs for grief, actually, that I've done. They even have quantum energy fields in it. So yeah, it's really be interesting to put together a really cool playlist for grief. There's some great songs. Okay, any other comments before we move into trauma and PTSD? Of course, here's the homework information. So again, I'm going to post this Google Doc, and I'll leave on suggesting, so you guys can type in, we'll see what suggestions you came up with, we can incorporate them, right? And then, but again, the goal here is to post this on our website for anybody to use. And I want to make it way more refined, way more detailed. So much work to get this organized in the best way. But then also create a version that's more professional. We'll take out all the angels, right? And for psychotherapy boards, right? So they could and read it out for just a psychotherapy board. Yeah, lots of homework. Happy music playlist could be cool. Right? Peaceful music, all types of things. Okay. That's beautiful. Something good for job here. Okay. Let me put that in there. Let's show the rest. Next, which drew. Next, which drew. Okay, cool. I'm gonna make sure they're right. Is that another song?